Mr. Sullivan.
Mr. Jackson.
Here we are.
Yes, I just got back from 2 weeks in the UK, and beautiful weather. It was like sunny and 65 to 70 every single day. It was probably the best stretch of weather and even the Brits were saying, something's wrong.
They're saying, Mr. Sullivan's in town.
Yeah, we had a great time. And,
it was almost like staying in Toronto.
Yeah, we were there for 3 days of business, and the rest of it was, just wandering around what I consider to be the world city. You think about cities. And we go to L.A., which is a big, global city, Chicago, New York, but London, I think, is the world city. I think more things
I think you're right.
with London than any other city in the world, and it's just we got back.
It was really funny.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just to amplify that, I was when I'm over there. I think I told you I have a new home in London at the Four Seasons in Trinity Square, which is great. So it's my headquarters now when I'm in the world's city. But just to see what you were saying there, in the Four Seasons there, on the television, they have this long list of channels that are like Oman TV and Qatar TV and Jordan TV and all these international channels that are like the CNN equivalent kind of thing of that country. And it made me realize, what a world, we live in on the big thing. Our filtered view of it is really sort of the Western world. I mean, we see CNN or CNN International, which is out of London or whatever. But to see all of these, country-based channel, I would just stop and watch on a few of these channels just to get the flavor of what that actually looks like and what it is. Like if you live in Sudan, that's what they're watching, like Sudan CNN kind of thing, And it made me realize London, just like you said, London, I've never seen that in any other city. London truly is like that, an international hub,
Yeah, I mean, when I go to New York, if I don't watch that much TV, but just to go through the channels, you'll definitely have a couple Chinese stations. You'll have a Japanese stations, about 7 or 8 Spanish of one kind or another, and probably a German, probably a French, but not the smaller countries that you were talking about. And that what it means to me is that the number of people coming from those countries to London justifies having a hotel like the Four Seasons. And, of course, the Four Seasons has hotels in so many of those countries.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
The world
it might be a Four Seasons. It might be a Four Seasons thing, too. Because
because I've never seen that, overwhelming wall of international vista than from there. But you think about what's coupling that now with the new Dreamliner airlines are coming out now, which have a 25,000 kilometer range, which makes any 2 points in the world a direct flight. So in theory, now you'll be able to go from London to Australia direct, or from London to anywhere in the world as a direct flight. And that's really
16,000 mile range, and there's nowhere in the world that you can't get to with a 16,000 mile range.
Yeah,
it's one way or the other. One way or the other, going over the pole or whatever. There's nothing in the world
all the way around.
Yeah. possibly Perth, Australia would be the only place you can't get to.
Yeah.
It's the most furthest away of any bigger, it's over 1 million people. And Perth, I think, is the furthest away from anything. I know that because of our friend Kim White.
Yeah, right.
He grew up in Perth. And he said, if you're in Perth and you want to go anywhere, you're going to go a long way. Yeah. And anyway, but it's fascinating to me, just the busyness, just the normal busyness, because we were out for breakfast this morning here in Toronto, and it's like the streets are abandoned here compared to
Sunday morning.
Street in London. On Sunday morning, it's like it's like there's been a plague or something. Most of the people have died or something, but that's just normal for Toronto people. But take almost any part of London on Sunday morning, and it's just packed. I mean, people are out walking, and it's quite a place. I like it, because I was born on a farm, and if you're born on a farm, your dream about the future is the biggest, most packed city that you can think of. And by the same token, people who dream about having a farm, I know they weren't born on one.
That's right. Right on. So the burning question I have, Dan, is: are the people of London procrastinators?
Oh, sure.
It's international, so they're over there too.
It's global.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about a global condition here.
Yes.
And I've given a lot of thought to that because we left off our last podcast on a notion that procrastination is the natural way of being for humans. Mm-hmm. It's actually
genetically wired in.
Yeah, and I think it's just the fact that our minds are hardwired with this time sense, and I think it's, I remember Shannon Waller has an oldest daughter who is now starting college, so I've really observed her through her entire life, because Shannon's been with us for this year. She'll be with us for, just trying to think here, 27 years. She's been in coach. She's got the longest continuous connection with us of anybody. And I remember there's a sign language that you can teach children. It's different from the the sign language that they teach. But you can, children start developing a desire to communicate long before their vocal cords, and, that they can actually talk, actually command language. And so it's about, it's somewhere between a year and a half and 2 years that they start getting this desire to do it. And so they taught her this sign language. And so she had about 40 different words that she could actually sign with, and she took right to it. She's got a younger sister who didn't take to it at all, but Madison took to it at all. And just before she started actually talking, she had jumped into where she could talk about something that had happened the day before in the park, and she was conscious that yesterday was different from the day that she was in, and you could see it in how she was using sign language to talk about the blue bird that she had seen in the park.
Really?
Before she went to sleep last night. So this was a different time dimension. And the moment that, within about a week after she crossed the line of using sign language to talk about something that had happened yesterday, she started talking. So my feeling is that the time sense and language, just from using her as a sample of one, very thorough scientific survey that I'm doing for a quick start, if you have an example of one, you've got enough research.
That's enough facts.
That's enough facts. I don't need any more facts, I've got to say. But my feeling was that our overwhelming desire to communicate has a lot to do with our time sense. It just occurred to me, and I was thinking about this in London, and here we're right back into the thick of it here with our podcast. By the way, people are listening to this in the UK.
Yes, I bet. It's global.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so my feeling is that probably, built right into our brains are two things: the ability to talk, and we pick up on it. In other words, we're imitating other people, because we, the language we use is a function of where the conditions that we grow up in, grammar and vocabulary, and how we talk about things is really a function of who's talking around us when we start talking. But the other thing about this time sense, and my feeling is that because we have this time sense of being able to see both backwards and forwards in time, that my feeling is that procrastination would come right along with that, that we'd be seeing things in the future where we have an emotional tie to that, but we're not prepared to act on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's, it all ties together, isn't it? I mean, when you think about the inherent things we have, we're wired to, and the gift that we have as humans is an ability to see something in the future that doesn't exist yet, right? So we have this sense, this gift of being able to consciously allocate future time, or have a sense of it that I could do this later, as opposed to thinking that everything has to happen in real time, and if we don't do it right now, we can't do anything. Tied with our ability to communicate it, then, like you're saying, built in, that we, even in the youngest kids, have this ability to differentiate between that yesterday was not today, and that this sense of, even if you haven't articulated this sense of tomorrow, I wonder how, if at a year and a half, 18 months straight of closing your eyes and then waking up and there it is again, that maybe you realize that, I see what happens. I close my eyes and then I'm here again. I get to do this again. And then
I'm not sure. And I'm not sure it was Madison, but I've noticed other kids, they talk about light sleeps and dark sleeps. And light sleeps are naps, but dark sleeps are going to bed at night. In other words, it gets dark and then you sleep. Yeah, and they know that it's much more significant what happens on the other side of a dark sleep than what happens on a light sleep. And
that's an interesting. That's kind of the first way that explaining to kids how far something off. It's 3 more sleeps. 3 more sleeps, and then it'll be
dark sleep.
Christmas.
3 more dark sleeps. Yeah.
3 more dark sleeps. That's funny.
Yeah.
I have to still refer to things as that. So many more sleeps. 2 more sleeps till Christmas. That's right.
But I think that this picking up on a reality that's in your head but not in the world around you yet is a crucial, and I think you're alone with it. I was trying to think that why procrastination doesn't get talked about is because that feeling of seeing something probably uniquely, because I think that each of us, what we see in the future is unique to just kind of what our brain is looking for. And that's not really known to people outside of ourselves, what our brain is actually looking for, because we're not really fully in touch with what our brain is actually looking for. And then to be able to visualize something in very clear form. Just a very test example. I got back on Friday night. So this is being Sunday, and the first thing I did is check my calendar to see if you were in the calendar, because I hadn't given any thought to it during the 2 weeks in London. But they're 12:30. check in with Dean. And then, I'm visualizing. I thought about it yesterday. Last night, I made sure my cell phone was completely, so I'm getting ready for something that is real in my brain, but it's not actually real yet until the time arrives, at 12:30.
Yeah.
And, I was just thinking about that. It's kind of a neat thing that our brains can do that.
Yes. And I think that part of this is that our brains, after nearly 2 years of this now, can count on that, right?
Mm-hmm.
That you've established that is the pattern. That I talk with Dean at 12:30 on Sundays when we're around, right? So we've established that our subconscious brain already looks for and expects that to happen. Now, I bring that up because I had some conversations with a guy who was sharing some of these things about the subconscious and how it's always this battle between our conscious brain's desires, right? We can see something, intellectually know that we want it, emotionally get attached to wanting it, and then writing checks that need to be cashed in the future by our future self, right? We're procrastinating, kind of writing in the future. And the way that it was really kind of interesting that our subconscious brain only establishes things in patterns, right? That in over repetition is what establishes something as a pattern. So that's kind of why when you hear that it takes 21 days to develop a habit, that it's that. If after 21 Sundays we've been, here at 12:30, we start to get conditioned for that it doesn't really take any conscious effort to remember that's what's going on. That's kind of imprinted in us, And it's funny because I had that same thing always around mid-morning on Sunday. I'll have this, because often I'm not even looking at my watch or doing anything, but sort of mid-morning in my body will go, oh, is it today's Sunday? And that'll immediately lead me to thinking, okay, are we recording today just like you did yesterday?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So there's something going on there
that
you get that established.
Yeah. So I went into the calendar and I clicked on the appointment with you today, and I noticed that Anna had sent a 12-month calendar out to you of all the Sundays over the next year, and she simply said, Dean, please indicate the ones that don't work for you, and otherwise it's confirmed. So she said, just tell me the ones that you can't make, and the rest of them are confirmed. So she's already confirmed about 25 dates ahead of time, for the next 12 months. And it's not only our habit, but it's Anna's habit too. Anna's making sure, because we've agreed, that it's going to be on Sunday. It's going to be 12:30, and and Sundays you can make, they're not in, or they're in, and the ones you can't make, well, they're not. And we know that a year out. We know that whole thing a year out, and it's kind of interesting how this reality has gotten cleared simply because we had lunch and I brought up a topic going on almost 2 years ago, and you said, "Hey, you've been holding out on me. This is interesting." And then we immediately the next day started the process, and we've been totally consistent. And I think the reason is because our brains were both looking for a conversation on this topic, and therefore it's become a habit really fast. Yeah. And I have to tell you, it's been very liberating for me over the last 2 years to talk about a topic that up until now has strictly been private.
Right, exactly. I think that we may be the only two in the world having this conversation as looking at procrastination as a superpower to embrace rather than as something to rid yourself of.
Yeah, totally unique. I've checked. If it's going to show up, it's going to show up on Google, and I haven't seen it show up on Google, I mean, it's always seen as a problem, even the people who say, well, you can utilize, they still consider it a problem. It's something that there's a bit of character flaw that you do this. And I said, maybe this is the truly common human condition is procrastination. And where we become unique is what we do with it. But actually we share this, and simply I think because of the way that our brains are structured in relationship to language and time and everything like that. That everybody where everybody starts is in a state of procrastination, and then you're either more successful or less successful at going from that point forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of an interesting frame, because the thing that makes procrastination, in the world be perceived as a bad or shameful thing is in the way that you're thinking about it, way that you're kind of looking and talking about it, because the reality is we can only do things now. We can only do something in the present moment, and there are lots of things, just by default that we're intending on doing and committed to doing and will do in the future that are not viewed as procrastination. Like you look at you could argue, they're saying that, okay, we have an intention of doing, 25 new podcasts over the next year for this, and that we're doing this one right now, but that doesn't kind of mean that we're procrastinating the other 24, because we know that they're coming. We've addressed it, and we know that they're coming. It's almost like the shame of it, and I think what the useful thing that we've discovered about procrastination is its reliability to get our to bring to us the things that we haven't yet locked into reality or into the calendar.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think that's kind of the thing. It's like once something is decided on and settled, you could argue that you're not that procrastination has done its job to bring you up to bring it up to the front, and you get to even if the action is brainstorm the project and it's put in the calendar on Thursday at 10 a.m. for 2 Jacksonian units of 20 minutes. Now is not, procrastination has done its job to get it to that point.
You've been alerted. You've been alerted to something, and that's what that. And my feeling is that the things that appear to you, in other words, you're kind of emotionally. Well, first of all, you're intellectually kind of engaged with it, but you're emotionally kind of connected to it. That has a lot to do with what's been going on already in your life. In other words, that there's a certain kind of buildup of momentum of that you like certain things and you don't like others. Well, and that's why I think it's kind of unique. It's common enough that you can have a conversation about it. But I think our brains work. There's kind of a way that all human brains work, and we have concepts that we buy into. But I read one of my great delights in going to London is Waterstone's bookstore on Piccadilly.
Mm-hmm. Love it.
And it's 5 floors, and it's filled with couches and
I'll be there in a couple of weeks.
And
yeah.
And so I spent I went 3 times during the 2 weeks, and I just hang out and I walk around, and it shows the one superior advantage to books over Kindle, over the electronic ones, because Amazon does a pretty good job of feeling out kind of what I like, and they're connecting me all the time to to books that are kind of in the vein of things I'm interested in. But when I go into Waterstones, I come across stuff that I didn't even know I was interested in, and I read a book, and it's called 7 Types of Atheism. And
7
short
types.
book.
I love that.
Yeah, and he talks about, going back 2,000, roughly about 2,500 years. It starts with the Greeks. This whole thing of not granting reality to a thing called God or gods. And it's the Greeks, the Romans, it's a Western thing. It doesn't show up because there isn't a corresponding kind of history of thought anywhere in the world except in the West. There isn't, like in the Islamic world, there's no history of how people thought about in the Oriental world until you hit Confucius. Right. There isn't. And it's not seen as progressive in the West. It's seen as sort of that we build on conversations that have happened before. Like it's not unusual to, tune into a station. I was watching a little video, a YouTube video on a Austrian mathematician called Gödel, who I'm very intrigued by. But in the little lecture by a math professor, he makes reference to Aristotle. He makes reference, who lived 2,300 years ago, but Aristotle is part of present day thinking, and there isn't the corresponding thing anywhere else in the world where you have this feeling of a certain continuity or integration of thinking over long stretches of time. And he said that the West is really the only place where the idea of progress actually developed, and that there was a direction to human affairs. He said that's not known in other cultures, and I was thinking about that in relationship, because I read about these 7 different kinds of denying the existence of God, really basically what the central thought is there. And I had read a lot of it, because I'm a reader. And but the one thing is that my feeling is that the intensity of the feeling procrastination probably is much, much greater in a culture that believes in progress, because to a certain extent you have this feeling that you're part of this general society that's making progress, but you're kind of lagging, you're kind of falling behind, you're not part of the general flow of things, and I wonder if the idea of being a procrastinator or procrastinating being a negative thing actually happens anywhere that doesn't have a general societal sense of progress.
I mean, I think it would have to, just by default, because that procrastination is really a state, or the way we've defined it really is only the guilt or shame of not doing something now that you want to do, or pushing it off into later, which is almost how it happens, right? I think it's like a sense of, it's almost like the psychic interest on the debt of future, dipping into the future for a current obligation. I'll do that later. I'll do that later is the psychic equivalent of put it on my tab. That you're entering into a time debt the moment you say it.
Yeah.
You've committed to it.
My sense is if you didn't believe in progress in a general sense, that you're part of a society that's making progress. I'm just wondering if you would actually experience that was a bad thing, putting it off to the future, when you're part of a society that puts everything off to the future.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
The famous mañana, mañana. Well, I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it tomorrow. Well, that's not acceptable. That's not acceptable in our part of the world. But in other parts of the world, the fact that there's kind of a humor attached to it and everything like that indicates that it's probably pretty acceptable to put something off to tomorrow or put it off to next year. Or who cares?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'll do it tomorrow. That's when we think about that, what would be the evidence that you're in a society that doesn't value progress or even have a construct for it? Yeah,
because we don't realize that our concepts that we have, which are very intense for us, aren't necessarily universal, and they haven't been universal since the beginning of time, and they're not necessarily universal in terms of geography. That there are parts of the world that just don't respond to the whole notion that you have to get it done. If you're going to feel good about yourself, you have to act on it now. And there's probably whole parts of the world where that's a meaningless concept.
Right. That's the whole thing. I feel like you're describing the fish who said to the other fish, "You ever wonder what it's like outside of this water?" And what the other one says, "What's water?" Right.
Yeah. Well, that's the Gödel. The mathematician, and he's got this thing which actually threw the entire world of mathematics into a panic in the 1930s, 1940s, and it's called the incompleteness theorem. And translated into everyday language, it means that you can't be inside of a system and understand the system that you're in.
Yeah.
Okay. And I feel to a certain extent we've kind of cracked a little bit of the code on this, you and I, because we've made a general statement that the starting point for everybody's experience is actually procrastination, that you're visualizing future realities that have no basis in reality. In other words, you're visualizing it, and that causes a negative or positive response inside of you, and it leads you to the threshold of action or not action, threshold of decision or not decision, and we feel this intensely. And what you and I are saying, well, yeah, that's the natural point. That's where we all start. We start there, and then we get more skillful, or we don't become skillful at all in kind of dealing with that experience. And my feeling is that we've kind of we're two fish that kind of discovered water.
What is all this stuff? They're surrounded in it. Everybody.
Have you ever noticed?
Everybody's in this water.
Have you noticed?
Talking about it, yeah.
Nobody's talking about, and we're not outside of the water. I mean, we're not.
Right.
We're not outside of the water, and that's why. I mean, I'm dealing with a great deal of skepticism, this thing of artificial intelligence surpassing humans, because I'm saying is that artificial intelligence is just a creation of humanity. So they're inside the human experience.
So it's frozen in time. Yeah.
Yeah, they can't get outside. I mean, if we can't get outside of humanity, they sure as heck can't, artificial intelligence. And I think there's a lot of silliness about this, and I think the reason is that people don't fully comprehend Gödel's law, but I think that the fact that we're the first two who are actually talking about this topic, and it seems to have kind of infinite dimensions to it. In other words, every Sunday, I'm discovering, gee, that's another twist on this procrastination thing that and I said, I have a feeling there's no end to it. I mean, if we go 25,
I don't think so either.
if we go 25 years and we do 25 a year, I know my math, that's 625 podcasts. I don't feel that we'll be any closer to exhausting the subject of procrastination than we are today. I mean, I just feel like that this is kind of an infinite realm.
Yes, I agree. I had an interesting distinction while you were gone. It's been a little bit of it's been a couple of weeks, at least 3 weeks, I think, since we spoke. So over that time, I discovered one of the foundational things that I've kind of learned from you is this idea of making something up, making it real, and making it recur, right? That the three kind of that progression. And what I learned about the way my own system works, because I definitely skew on the make it up and make it real with help sort of end of things. And that there's a layer in between the making it real and making it recur that is, there's a packaging up or there's something that has to happen to make something ready to recur in a way. Like when you look at the workshops, when your thing was you made the workshops up, you made the thinking tools, you made the workshops real in order to make them sort of recur or replace yourself in it. You had to bring in other coaches, but there's a preparation of that requires some transitional tools or transitional development that really enables or instructs the people who are doing the recurring to do that. And it just kind of dawned on me that's the point I'm at organizationally right now is in preparing those things so that other people can take the recur element of things and move forward. So that was an interesting distinction for me. It's almost like that, making it scale ready, the way I described it.
What I've done is that I've decided I don't want to know anything about that.
Yeah.
And what I mean is that I feel that the skill that it requires to go from the make it real stage to the make it recur stage, I'm so not good at that I don't even want to know what's involved there. I just want to surround myself with people who are actually good at that, and they see things that I can't possibly see. In other words, it's not within, because I'm really good at making things up. A lot of people can't comprehend. When I say, they say, how do you keep coming up with new stuff? And I say, well, you just come up with something new. And and they say, well, what are you responding to? I mean, in other words, how do you think it through to get to the point where you can do that? And I said, well, that's not really the way it happens. You just get an idea and say, hey, that's interesting. Let's play with that a little bit, Yeah. So next week I have to have a brand new quarter for the 10 times workshop because it starts the week after next. Okay. And I'm going to be.
I'm coming, by the way. I'm going to be in.
So I said, well, probably on Sunday afternoon after I talk to Dean, I'll figure out what the main concepts are. And sure, actually, I was thinking about it a little bit. Yes, I went to La Select yesterday, and I just got going. And sure, Zach, because I've got a deadline, and I have to get it all laid out during the next week. The whole thing has to be structured and everything else. And sure enough, 2 things just popped out. And I said, oh, those are great. And one of them's called and it's actually the influence of the Game Changer workshop. And one of them is how you make your money.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and it's an exercise where you go through and you actually identify how you make your money as an entrepreneur, and then you analyze it from three conditions. One is, could this way of making money go 10 times? In other words, if you stick with it, can you go 10 times? And then the next one is, if it grew 10 times, would the activity fascinate and motivate you? And that's whether it's actually a unique ability activity for you to do it. And then the third thing is, could you keep it up for 25 years? So you just analyze how you make money from those three aspects. And I said, that'll be interesting to talk about.
That is great.
Yeah, and you kind of grade yourself, but it just popped out, And so that, this is my 29th year of every quarter making up something new. So making it up is really hard. But if you ask me now, how do you make this real? I have enough of an interface with artists and, multimedia artists that I have around me. So I've kind of collected a whole bunch of make it real people around me that I can just do a really rough layout, and then they'll take it into form. But to make it recur, to make it recur, which for me involves the other coaches, and I don't have really the foggiest idea how to set that up.
Right. And that's
but I do have people who are good at that. I do have people who are really good at setting up the whole recurring process. So this is really where the teamwork and the collaboration is so crucial in life. You just have to accept that you don't even bother finding out how to do this, because it's going to be frustrating. You won't do it well, and it's just going to use up an enormous amount of energy. And at the end of it, you're not going to be any better at it than you are right now. So don't even go there. Just look for the person who's good at it.
Yes, and that was my realization, that organizationally, that's the gap for us. We're strong. I've surrounded myself with people to go from the make it up to make it real. I've got that. And I haven't been involved in the, making it recur. Some of the things that we have, the processes are set up like that.
So you need a new who.
I do. That's exactly
You need a new who. You need a new
who takes the real, the person who takes the stuff we've made up and made real to package that to make it recur. That's you're absolutely right. That's the conclusion that I came to from this. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the other thing is the whole thing is to not be self-critical that you're not good at that.
No, I'm beyond that. Absolutely. Yeah. No, I don't feel bad about that at all. I'm happy to be aware of it now and realizing that just looking at the organization, that's a role that we need to fill, because it is something that we are very good organizationally at, going from getting it up to making it real, and that's my favorite. That's my favorite part. And now it's this next level of building, not for me, but building the team that can make things recur.
It's akin to? Can I tell you? It's an ongoing. Every time I go to London, I go deeper into a particular experience in London, and I think it's kind of unique to the world. And it's their black cabs. Cabs.
I'm anxious to hear the update.
Yeah, and so I've spent a better part of a whole day once, Babs and I, with a black cab who's the historian of the black cabs. And so we wanted to get sort of a background. Where did this come from? And it's 300 or 400 years old. It actually starts in the late 1600s, and it's started with buggies and horses, and what it is, and for the listeners who don't really know this, the black cabs, to actually get a license, which is called a medallion, in London to be a black cab driver requires probably greater work and greater study and greater proof of skill than getting a math MBA in college. As a matter of fact, it'd be much easier to get an MBA than to get a black cab certificate. And what it is that you have to literally, on bicycle or foot or moped, you have to actually have experienced all 6,000 streets in London. And it has to have registered visually with you where that street is and what it's connected and what the connected is. And then they're given tests where they're saying you're here and you're going someplace else. It's about a 30 or 40-minute drive. And you have to tell us, and you have to actually sketch it out here, what the different streets are that are going to connect you to that. That's the quickest route and the cheapest route for the customer. In other words, it's going to get them there the fastest at the lowest cost because they're on the meter. And they're given about 20 of these, and they have to, really succeed with this. And then they have to also demonstrate that they can't get they can't get perturbed or they can't get impatient when they're with the passenger. In other words, when the passenger says, "I want to go such a thing," I have to be able to respond to them immediately and say, "Okay, right. I just want to tell you there's construction on this route right now, so we're going to have to do you may have gone here before, but we're going to have to go a little bit out of the way to do this," and you have to be able to respond to that, and you can't get frustrated or. So anyway, this time I was asking them, I said, "Do you remember the class that you started out with?" Because they do it in classes, in other words, you go to school and you have a classroom and you start off, and how many people were in your original classroom? And they said, "No, 25, 30. And I said, "Do you remember how many of them actually got their medallion?" He said, "Well, we know the statistics. It's about 1 out of 25 who start the process actually get it." And I said, what would you say is the crucial difference of why you got it? And once you have it, it's for life. So you never are retested on this once you go through the 3 years and you get it. And there's a cost to the process, and you have to pay for it. And I said, "So what's the difference?" He says, "In my brain is a complete map of the city of London, and I can immediately see the map. See, you don't have that mapping ability where you see the city visually. You wouldn't." He said, "Would anybody who doesn't have that ability stick with it?" And he said, "No, you wouldn't, because you wouldn't get any satisfaction out of it. And you just wouldn't be becoming more skillful." And he says, "Pretty well." He said, "I know the 60 main routes by heart. So it's a big circle. It's called the M25, and their territory is inside the M25, and there are 60 main routes, which all eventually get you to Trafalgar Square. And then off that are about I don't know what the number is, 2,000 or 3,000 streets, and they kind of know where these streets are. Plus, they know 1,000 landmarks and they say, I can see it." He says, "The moment you give me where you're going, I can see it in my head, what I'm going to do to actually get to where you're going." And, there are very few straight streets in London, and the same street in direction. The same street, it can have 5, 6 different names and everything like that. So it's really a remarkable ability, and it's unique in the world. I have never come across this, and but it's the same thing that you're talking about in the move over from Make It Real. Well, I kind of have a handle on how to get into making it real. In other words, I've set up all sorts of teamwork. So once I make it up, I have a sense of predictability that if I hand it over to this person, it's going to make it real. But how the person who makes it real moves into the territory of make it recur, I have no comprehension.
Right. That's it. Me too. And I see that's now that's a specialist.
And it's good to back off on that.
Position
for both of us,
it's
good to back off on that and not demand this of ourselves, because Dean, we could keep at this for 50 years, and we wouldn't be any better at making it recur
Oh yeah,
than we are today.
I'm over that. I'm firmly planted in the make it up. I'm absolutely happy to do that. That's funny.
You're kind of like a born again make it up person.
Right. That's exactly right. I'm realizing that it's okay to just be that.
Yeah.
That's so funny. Yeah. Born again. I meant to ask about the grand experiment with the impact filterer.
Process. We're getting great reports back. I have a Zoom call with Ari this week, and but first couple people, I got the reports back, and they said it's a dream. So and what Ari's doing is making sure that the system is. He's taking it to the idea. He's making the system real. And for those of you not, really understanding what Dean and I are talking about, the central tool of making progress in strategic coach is called the impact filter, and it's a thinking process. And what I've been conscious of that your progress in strategic coach is a happy experience or not happy experience, depending on how good you are with the impact filter. And we have a suspicion that if people are really good at impact filters, they stay inside the program and look forward to more. And if they're iffy with the impact filter, they're forward participation. So it'll pay for itself in terms of renewal if we can solve the problem that a person doesn't have to do the impact filter. They just have to phone a 1-800 number 24/7, and they'll be a impact filter facilitator will answer the call, and that person will take them through the entire thinking process on the computer so they can actually see what's actually happening on the computer. And then it'll be like a Zoom call, actually. It'll be like a Zoom call. And then the person will do the writing to your satisfaction, each of the boxes of the impact filter. And at the end of 45 minutes, we'll send back a completed impact filter PDF. And so the first person, and we just tested with game changers. So I had 10 game changers who signed up. And that was interesting. We just sent an email out, and we had them in 6 hours. We had the 10 people who wanted to do it. We had their names, and we just passed it on to Ari, part of the Make It Real process. And then he's been, having each of them go through the process, and then he's creating the system so that it works for everybody. When we go, we'll go first game changers, and then game changers plus 10 times, and then game changers plus 10 times, and then the signature level, the 3 levels of the program. But we want to make sure that, there's real quality of satisfaction and service with this. But Ari knows how to do this. I don't know how to do it.
There's the thing, right?
It recurs all the time, so that it recurs all, And so it's a virtual company that he has. So I was thinking this could be 24/7, This could be 24/7. Somebody in India or somebody.
I was listening to that. Yeah, that you called this number, send out the bat signal, and there's an impact filterer waiting to respond for you. That's great.
Yeah. But we're not there yet. But I can see in not too long a period of time, we're over 8 time zones. Coaches for the most part, and then we have people who live in Australia and Singapore and India and everything else. So he probably would have a virtual company where people could answer. This is where Cloudlandia really works really well.
That's exactly right. I love that, right?
This is where Cloudlandia is totally in service of the mainland.
Yes, you're absolutely right. Very funny.
That's wow. I was thinking of Elon Musk because Elon's been going through headwinds last month or so, and it has to do. They can't he's not being able to solve the third series. I think it's called the R series, or
I don't know.
Little car. And I just read an article why it's not
the E. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not a Elon Musk problem. It's not a production problem. This type of car, which is a small sedan, is just not selling anywhere in the world right now. Certainly in the development. And so he's bringing out a little sedan that costs $70,000. Well, they said it's 35, but actually, when you eliminate the electric subsidies, which are mostly disappearing around the world, and then there's other things. So it's actually it's one of the more expensive small sedans for the general market. But the other thing is that people in mainland just aren't buying them, so it's a great Cloudlandia idea, but the people in the mainland just aren't really buying this type of car right now. They're going for crossovers and SUVs and more expanded cars. So I was saying there's a collision between a car. And, the car business is really a mainland industry. It's not a Cloudlandia.
Absolutely. Yeah. Physical.
Yeah, physical.
Yeah,
and I was just noticing that he made his money on PayPal, which was purely a Cloudlandia idea, and I'm just noticing that he's doing all sorts of things like, he says, I'm going to, his other company, the boring company, the hype, the going underneath Los Angeles.
Yeah, right.
I'm going to think. And a neighborhood group got together and said, we really don't want all that commotion going on underneath us. And they're going to hold it up. They're going to have their lawyers protest against this. That's neighborhood groups are mainland realities. They're not.
Yes, that's it.
They're not Cloudlandia. There's no Cloudlandia neighbor.
Yeah, not like CAD software, seeing theoretically how you could bore beneath the city and the rate and how long it would take.
Yeah, and the States, there's this weird thing that unless it's not specified by a jurisdiction, it would be the state of California, that generally speaking, if you own an acre on the top, you own the acre underneath. And
is that, I wonder about that, like how they have in Ontario riparian rights or whatever. I wonder for waterfront, but I wonder if eminent domain, kicks in 50 feet under the surface or whatever. Here's
the thing about it. Ultimately, a homeowner could lose, but they could actually get politicians involved with it, saying that, there haven't been environmental studies. Plus, it's in a quake zone in Los Angeles, and so we're fooling around underground in a quake zone, and people say, there's been no long-term environmental impact on this. That's worth at least 10 years of delay on the project right there.
I think you're probably right.
It's like drones, so the FAA in the United States said that if you're over you can't get above 500 feet with a drone. Okay. They've instituted this, and I think it's 500 feet. And so what some local communities saying is that, it can't go above, but if you're over our neighborhood, it can't be below 400 feet. So the drone can't deliver anything unless they're dropping it. So the whole notion
right.
Amazon.
You can only pass through. Right, exactly.
Yeah, you can pass through between 400 and 500 feet, but you can't. So a local community group can just say nothing comes. We have the airspace above and everything like that. And these are mainland obstacles. These are not Cloudlandia obstacles.
Right.
So
exactly.
the distinction, I think, is one of the great distinctions that's come out of the conversation for me, this difference where people project visions of things, but the vision is all a Cloudlandia vision. But once you get into the mainland realities, things slow down.
And I think that, it was just thinking about Elon, that he recently just said that he made a mistake, that too much automation and not enough humans in what they were doing.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, I mean, he's kind of a real, because his projects tend to be way out. The two things, they tend to be very visionary. But the other thing is that it's hard to see why I would be interested in going 700 miles an hour underground. You know, I'm trying to think why would I want to do that? First of all, if it's even possible, you know, I mean, kind of feels like a real barf experience to me.
No, exactly. And meanwhile, you've figured it out. As long as I've known you, you've had your whole self-driving car situation.
16th year of driverless Dan's.
In your Bennington bubble,
in my Bennington bubble, you know, and they are 15 minutes early. The cars are always clean. And I used to not be able to read while I was in motion, but for some reason in my later years, I've overcome that, and I can read my Kindle. And, you know, and the guy says, you know, it's going to be an extra 10, 15 minutes. I don't care, you know.
That means I get whatever.
I get a few more pages. I get a few more pages in before we get there, you know.
I thought about you.
Haven't driven in the city in Toronto for 16 years. I haven't driven at all. And
I may have told you, but I thought about you. I experimented with with taking a limo from Winter Haven to the airport, because normally I'd been driving and paying, and I kind of like that. It does change the whole dynamic of it.
Well, the other thing is they haven't really explored the enjoyment of driving. You know, I'm not one of them who necessarily, you know, my nervous system really isn't geared in that direction. But I talk to people about driving. I said, and I talk to people who have commutes, like they have like 45 minutes, an hour commute. And I said, what's that experience like? And they said, you know, it's my thinking time for the day. We're generally going so slow that you don't really have to be, you know, I mean, you just have to have that.
I'll tell you, there's a difference in the level of thinking when you're not driving, and I could be sitting there with my remarkable tablet, truly engaged in the thinking process.
You can't do that. You can't do that if you're the driver.
Right. That's exactly
the thing. You know, the thing that's being said, this terrible waste of time with commuting. You know, people, and I asked people who are commuters, I said, do you consider it a terrible waste of time? And they said, no, it's actually a pretty nice time. You know, I turned my phone off during the trip so nobody can reach me while I'm, you know, those who do that. But they have a control over their day that they don't experience when they're not commuting. And I said, you know, I don't know if they're going to want to give that up. I don't know if people are going to want to give that up. They've kind of established there's kind of like an autonomy and independence, even though from the outside it looks like an incredibly boring, frustrating activity. I've talked to enough people who don't experience that way, saying if you think that everybody's just going to give this up because you think it's a bad experience, I think you've got some news. You know.
I think you're right.
Yeah. Anyway, very enjoyable. So, a takeaway for you today.
Well, this, you know, idea that I really can, you know, embrace somebody else doing even just a who for my filling in that making it recur gap, having again the thought that I don't have to be the one to do that, because I did find that part of my thing, I realized that the transition is in really embracing all the recurring things. All the things that I have are definitely scale ready to recur, you know, but there's not this, they're not fully prepared to turn over to somebody who's ready to. do it, but I need somebody who can do that. That's where that was that's my realization in the last little bit here, and confirmed today.
The thing about this ability not to, or what I would say, this awareness to realize that you don't have an ability in this area, and there's no way for you to develop an ability in this area, and therefore it lies in somebody else's ability. I think it's what makes human beings such a magical species, because we figured out that we don't have to be the ones who are good at this. We can just find the person who's good at this. And good in the sense that they love doing what they're good at as much as we love doing what we're good at. And I think that's the crucial. Not just that they're capable of doing it, but they actually are passionate about the activity in the same way that we're passionate about our activity. I think that's the crucial thing for the successful make it up, make it real, make it recur, is at each stage along the line, the person not only has to be good at it, but they have to be as in love with that activity and keep getting better at it.
As we are in making it up. Yeah.
As we are in making it up. And I think that's, that's come to me. I've been pretty good about that probably for the last 10 or 15 years. But I can remember when I used to beat myself up for not being good at all three things.
I had a little sense of that. That was where I was thinking, is that I had a little sense of that guilt or shame of that. It's not. Yeah, that it somehow reflects on me.
But here's the sharp distinction between us historically. Is at the time when you weren't applying yourself, I was trying to apply myself.
Right. Oh, that's so funny. I love it. That's so great. Yes.
I was in pain when you had already given up on that.
I love it. That's the best.
That's my takeaway.
Man. That's worth it right there.
Okay.
I love it. Well, Dan, I'm excited.
I'll see you soon. I was just
going to say, I haven't been to Jacques at all this year yet since I bypassed Toronto. Okay.
Yeah.
I will talk to you soon. Thanks.
Okay, bye.